Of course, as Stephen alluded to, Moses ends up killing an Egyptian in defense of his fellow Israelites, but they don't see him as the prophet yet. They don't see him as the deliverer because his time has not yet come. Moses, unfortunately, got the timing wrong. He thought that his own people would see him as a deliverer. Moses was 40 years early. Moses was 40 years early, and he's going to need to spend 40 years in the wilderness of Midian for God to turn him into a shepherd and to teach him. And of course, in the midst of that, to appear to him. Sometimes people will say to me, Pastor Gary, why don't you pray with me for God's will in my life? I want to know what God's will is. And you know what? We often ask that question because we are consumed about the what concerning God's will. What is God's will for my life? I want to know God's will. And Moses understood the what of God's will. You know what he had wrong? The when of God's will. God's will is not just about what. It is also the timing. And sometimes we get frustrated feeling like, I want to do God's will, and I want to know God's will, and I want this, and I want that. And what God might put in your heart in terms of His will might only be half of the equation. The other half is waiting for His perfect timing, knowing when. Moses didn't get the when part right. So here he is 40 years old, and he thinks, I'm the deliverer, and God's put this in my heart, and I want to save my fellow Hebrews from being mistreated like this. And then his own fellow Hebrews turned on him and says, well, who made you, judge and deliverer? Are you going to kill us like you killed the Egyptian yesterday? And he realizes that what he thought he had done in secret was seen visibly, and now he runs for his life. And he spends the next 40 years. It won't be until he's 80 years old that God says, now the when.